Hello everyone and welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 16th of December. Everyone is starting to feel very Christmassy indeed, despite all the news about resurging COVID and of course the new variant Omicron with the pronunciation, all debate of how to pronounce that as well going on. I hope that you guys are all safe and well wherever you are in the world, and that I hope that you are settling down now into slowly winding down before a well-deserved Christmas break. So we have had some fantastic questions coming in, as always, from you. And it's a great pleasure to be able to get on to answer some of those very, very shortly. But first off, we have to, of course, talk about Prize Week. Hello, Tracy. Hello, Nassim. Thank you, everyone, indeed, for tuning in. Hello, Anna. Thank you so much indeed for coming along. It is Prize Week. This is what we do every month or so of the Q&A. We look back at the questions that we have been able to answer on live that you have sent in, and we pick the best one to win a prize. So we've been looking back through the questions that we've answered all the way back to kind of mid-October as it was now, because we haven't been able to have the Q&As quite as often as we'd like through the October-November period. My apologies, things have just been a little bit too crazy. Hello, Shelley. Hello, Barbara. Hello, Clive. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Hello, Mathilde. So we have looked back through all the questions, and this time there is a winner who I would like to announce right now with a drum roll, which I'm still very low tech. I need to get some kind of technical, much more high tech audio visual aids to this Q&A with a drum roll in the background. The prize is going to Tracy Rabaiotti for her question: were irrational fears and anxieties recognized in the ancient world? Moving off the word of the fact, phobia comes from the Greek. Did anyone note suffer from them? We had a great discussion following up with that about all sorts of particular irrational fears, and particularly I think we then got into spiders and snakes and some of the great research that's been coming out about those recently. So Tracy, congratulations, you are a winner. And what are you a winner of, Lorraine? Thank you very much indeed. No toga this evening, but I do have it nearby just in case at any moment I can jump into my toga attire, for which I'm increasingly being ribbed by all my colleagues at Warwick University. And you, Tracy, congratulations once again. I'm very glad it's made your Christmas. You get a copy of the Professor Michael Scott calendar for 2022. So this will be winging its way to, if you can let us know your postal address through the email, michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, or directly through the Facebook page as well. We will make sure that that gets out on its way to you, and let us know also how you would like the calendar signed or dedicated to you, or indeed if you wish to give it to somebody else, we'll do that as well, no problems at all. So don't forget, obviously, Tracy, congratulations, brilliant, well done. Thank you so much to you for your question, and indeed for all your questions that have come in, and do of course keep them coming in, because they are the lifeblood of this Q&A. And I in different places having to cut that off, and sorry you got my finger in the camera in the process, and hugely enjoy answering them, and we've got some absolute crackers for you coming out as well over the next 25 minutes or so. But my reminder, last chances for you to get your orders in for the Michael Scott calendar as well. It is available on Amazon. Remember, the gremlins are still disrupting us, and the Amazon post looks like it's the calendar for 2021, but it is in fact the calendar for 2022, so do not worry at all. Do order through Amazon, or if you prefer, you can order directly via email, michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, and pay through PayPal, and we will get that calendar out for you. And you can have another sneaky view of perhaps another of my kind of favourite shots. Here we go. Which shall we give you? How's about this one? This is for November 2022, and one of my favourite shots of sunsets. People who have seen this calendar before will know how much I like a good sunset. Here we are. This is end of the day sunset, with everyone relaxing on the beach, and a gorgeous sunset to keep us going through the dark winter months. So do think about getting your calendar orders in. For you, get them in over the next day or two, and you can still get them out to you for Christmas. And we have a limited number left, so kind of please do order before they all run out. Anyway, once again, congratulations to Tracy. And we now move on to some of the fabulous questions that have been coming in. Now, asked live last time, it was from Paul Carolyn Nicklin. And that's, is there a record of people making cider in classical history? Helen, you're asking me now about a Santa hat. I can't wear a toga and a Santa hat at the same time. You're absolutely right there. Perhaps I should have a Santa hat. In fact, hang on right there, everyone. I'm coming back. Here we are. You can see this is how well we manage things here. And we have props ready at every corner. There you go. Santa hat in at the ready. I mean, I don't know how you think kind of it suits me, but there we go. We'll do the Q&A this time around with a Santa hat on. Thank you so much for the suggestion, Helen. Brilliant idea. I hope you guys all have your Santa hats on or some sort of Christmas decoration as well. We will launch straight into the questions. You know what? I've got a funny feeling here because I've never answered questions about the ancient world wearing a Santa hat before. This is definitely an absolute first for me. So thank you. Paul Caroline Nicklin was asking, is there a record of people making cider in classical history? And yes, indeed, there is. Now, this may well have begun kind of in the Middle East. There's a drink from the ancient world known as shekar, which is where cider might come from, but also from the Greek. It was known as the sikera, or strong drink, as it translates, made with apples. They may well have been making it in Britain before the Roman invasion, but definitely when the Roman invasion takes place, early 1st century, that's when we start to see the beginning of actual kind of orchards being cultivated, orcharding techniques, and the development, kind of mass scale, if you like, production of cider happening in Britain. And then that continues all the way through, even after the Romans leave. And then it's the next big kind of leap forward, if you like, is when the Normans arrive in 1066, and they bring a whole bunch of different varieties of apples with them and introduce both a kind of a tannic and much more acidic brand of apple. That's probably not the technical term, is it? A brand of apple to the UK, which starts to make even better cider, and things carry on from there. It's that Brittany cider heritage coming through nicely. So yes, definitely cider making in classical history all the way around the Mediterranean, and kind of they were very much enjoying it, but perhaps not quite as much as they would have enjoyed, of course, their sort of classical wine drink, which obviously they drank when it was made in a very, very strong form, and then every wine was watered down. So you were civilized if you watered down your wine in the ancient world, as opposed to drinking it neat. Only barbarians and monsters would drink it neat, because if you drank it neat, you would just send you mad. So there we go. Paul, thank you very much indeed, Paul Carolyn, for your question. Whether they had mulled wine is an interesting question, a very Christmassy question. We should start to think about whether they added some spices to wine, which they did. I did a great fun post doing some research on little terracotta figures of people grating cheese over the summer for a project that we were doing at Warwick University. And it turns out that actually grating cheese to have on your wine was considered to be a very medicinal thing to do, very kind of a healthy and restorative thing to do. The great heroes of the Iliad, Nestor welcomes a hero worn, weary from the battle, and they sit down to have a glass of wine with grated cheese, and kind of sort of think, oh, Latifa, you're getting a request to join the broadcast message. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that at all, but it's showing me that you're here. I'm very glad that you like the Christmas hat, Antonio. Thank you very much indeed. I've just had your family round just before now, causing havoc in the house. Tracy, cheese and wine, yeah, but grated cheese, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Kind of indeed. But it was a big and very important part of wine drinking. Variety of apple, says Clive. Excellent. Definitely better than brand. Thank you all so much. So great question, Paul Carolyn. Now, here's a question I wanted to get back onto, because it was asked a couple of weeks ago and I haven't had a chance to kind of bring that back. People was asking, is that the origin of wine and cheese parties? Possibly, but particularly those pieces of cheese on those annoying little cocktail sticks, which I absolutely hate them. I think that I absolutely hate. Kind of, is it cheese and a kind of really awful piece of pineapple, isn't it? Or kind of a pineapple hedgehog or cheese hedgehog or something like that. Kind of save me from those, please. Now, here's a question from Elizabeth Henriksen. And she has been asking, and she asked a couple of weeks ago, and I promised I would get round to answering this time round. And it's about rude gestures. So Elizabeth is asking, she read somewhere that the first time the horrible gesture with the finger, as she puts it, the middle finger, is mentioned is when a pupil of Socrates was doing it. Is that possible? Could the ancient world be that awful to have had the middle finger gesture? Well, it is a really interesting question, and this has sent me down one of these fascinating dark alleys of research, and I've emerged to find that actually people have been writing scholarly works about this. Yes, indeed, and we can post this up and make this available to you. There is a brilliant article from 2017, no less, in the Phoenix Journal by a scholar called Max Nelson, who has been writing about kind of the history of the middle finger gesture. And this is really interesting, and particularly not so much the history, I guess, but as the literary evidence for it and where it's seen across ancient literature. And it is a very interesting one. So we particularly see, and Elizabeth, you're absolutely right, we do see a situation in which a pupil of Socrates is said to be putting the middle finger or using the middle finger in some kind of obscene gesture. And this is in the comedies of Aristophanes. Where else, given the lewd nature of ancient Aristophanic comedy, would you possibly see this? But yes, it's in Aristophanes, and particularly his Aristophanes' Clouds. So a pupil of Socrates being the very wise and philosopher, of course, this pupil does something or is alluded to doing something with his finger in making some kind of gesture. And he's told off by Socrates for doing this, very much kind of making it out that to do it puts him in the category of being a rustic, uncivilized, uneducated individual. Right. But he doesn't exactly say kind of what is this gesture. It's definitely involving a finger, but we're not quite sure exactly kind of how one is putting the finger. It doesn't say that it's putting the middle finger upwards, most importantly. So it might not quite be the same gesture as we're talking about it, but it's some kind of gesture with the finger. Now, when you then look more widely in Aristophanes, as Max has done, actually you hear this gesture being repeated, or this kind of gesture being repeated in other of his plays, particularly Arcanians and Peace. Good afternoon, Emma. You're coming from Tarakanova. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and Merry Christmas to you too. Alexis, I'm so glad that you were able to make it. So we're in Aristophanes, Arcanians and Peace, and we're talking about the middle finger, a very Christmassy topic, I think you'll agree. And in the Greek word for this is skimalizdein. Right? That's the verb in the infinitive, to skimalizdo. And this actually technically translates, and there's no easy way of saying this, right? As Max would have it, probing a female bird's ovipositor with one's little finger in order to check at what stage they are in the production of an egg. There we go. And if you just joined us at this moment, you will really wonder what tangent we have gone off on this time when you hear that definition of the Greek word skimalizdein. This is the kind of thing I love about ancient Greek, that one single word can be used to conjure up and denote such a complex and very particular activity. Some of you may have seen the British Library put out a series of posts this week about great words in different languages around the world, including a word in Norwegian that I won't even start to pronounce. But it is the verb relating to the Norwegian tradition on Christmas Eve of giving each other a book and then sitting down to read that book on Christmas Eve with a cup of hot chocolate in hand. So yes, here we have a slightly different kind of word and meaning. So skimalizdein, this to sort of insert a little finger or a finger into a female bird's ovipositor to check for egg. Now this is the way in which this, which was a technical exercise, which one would do if one was the keeping of kind of birds and particularly producing eggs, to understand whether or not there was going to be a windfall anytime soon, turns itself into a verb of insult, because to do that is to be the proactive and superior and active partner in an act, which if you assimilate that to the sexual act, makes you the proactive superior partner rather than the passive receiver. You are the giver rather than the receiver. And as you can well imagine, that gets you into a whole series of dynamics, sexual dynamics of who is the power pose person, who is the giver, and who is the receiver, whether that's male and female or male and male. And so it seems to have become a term of insult because it's a term about positioning yourself as the proactive superior giver rather than as the passive inferior receiver. So that's where the gesture in the ancient Greek world becomes an insult. But whether that means it's actually the middle finger being raised, and whether that means necessarily it's the middle finger being raised upwards, akin to the modern gesture, is not clear from the ancient sources. Again, who'd have thought it on a Thursday afternoon that we would get into this kind of technical detail over such an issue? Alexis is not sure if she's joined the right group here. I promise. I know this sounds awful, but here we are. This is not my question. Blame Elizabeth Henriksen. This is her question indeed. And we can take it one further, because then skimalisdein as a verb spawns a whole host of other verbs that are related to it. Because within the Greek world, people from different parts of the Greek world got renowned for being different things and having different particular character traits. Just like we do in England today with kind of the old-fashioned and very non-PC English, Scotsman and Irishman jokes, or kind of all the national stereotypes that we have of different nations around the world. And so, for instance, if you talked about Boeotians in the ancient Greek world, you would be talking about people if you say to act like a Boeotian, you're acting in a very gluttonous way, right? You kind of consuming and being completely occupied with consumption to the kind of exclusion of everything else. But one of the words that seems to be connected to skimalisdein is actually another great Greek verb, sifniasdein, which translates as to act like a Sifnian, i.e. someone from the island of Sifnos. And this became a fantastic term of insult because if you accused someone of acting like a Sifnian, it meant to accuse someone of wanting to be the passive receiver rather than active giver of any kind of act. So if you were accusing someone of being Sifniasdein, of being like a Sifnian, you were in effect giving them also the finger. So, Elizabeth Henriksen, thank you so much for your question. And so, yes, indeed, the gesture does seem to have an origin in the ancient Greek world and leads us down a dark alley of all sorts of things and insights into ancient Greek insulting one another, the art of insulting one another in ancient Greece and ancient Greek slang. Don't apologise in the slightest. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic question. But you also asked a second question, which was, we talked about disabled people being treated in ancient Greece, and it made me wonder if there was diabetes and other diseases, the ones we get from the way we live today. Great question as well. And yes, we know that there were all sorts of diseases that were commonplace, mainly coming out of the fact that not necessarily like we do today have very high sugar diets and thus have a greater increase in diabetes, etc. But certainly from the lack of different kinds of substances in diet and the lack of necessarily particularly clean and sanitized water to drink, that would also lead to all sorts of particularly stomach problems, parasite problems. We know that arteriosclerosis, as well as a result of diet, was a real problem in the ancient world. And that actually vast majorities of people, by the time they reached into their 30s and 40s, if they didn't have some kind of disability as a result of injury, through war, or through the hard work and hard life existence that many people had in the ancient world, would have some kind of internal issue from their diet and from the lack of sanitation. So yeah, absolutely, we have to imagine this populace as being full of kind of people suffering from these sorts of issues, rather than a population who look all like the statues that they so brilliantly produce. So Elizabeth, thank you for two great questions indeed. Now, we have a brief moment to stop to just take in what's going on around the world before we'll come back to a few more of your questions and clean the palate, if you like, after our discussion of the finger. So the things I wanted to raise and flag with you, that are all, of course, on the Facebook page, but some things that have really tickled me this week. The Venus de Milo statue, created in snow in Sheffield, a near exact replica of one of the world's classic sculptures, being recreated in snow by a mystery artist in South Yorkshire. The white stuff was remade to make the Greek Venus de Milo statue in Endcliffe Park in Sheffield on Sunday. Of course, I suspect it's still not there now, but hopefully you can see some photos on the Facebook page. And then, of course, the largest collection of ancient graffiti ever found in Pompeii. So we've got a kind of 11,000 1,000 wall writings that have been revealed in the ruins of all the latest excavations, particularly in the Reggio 5 region, and becomes the largest collection ever discovered. 50 researchers are actually working on this at the moment under the auspices of the Ancient Graffiti project, and some of the graffiti is probably using, if they were writing in Greek, the word Skifaisdein, or even perhaps Sifniasdein, as we have been discussing. And then here in Cambridgeshire, in the UK, talking about evidence for Roman crucifixion. Now, this is actually incredibly rare, although obviously crucifixion is one of the best known aspects, perhaps, of the ways in which Romans dealt with those they felt were an enemy of the state in the ancient world. Actual physical evidence for crucifixion very, very rarely survives because, of course, the bodies of those who were crucified were never normally given any kind of good burial because of the nature of their crimes and the punishments, and thus very rarely survive through to us today. Now, prior to the discovery in Cambridgeshire, actually the best surviving evidence of crucifixion, and by evidence we mean surviving skeletal remains that show the marks of what we know to have been the crucifixion technique, and that means particularly the hammering of nails through particularly the ankles to nail the body to the post. Survived, actually, one of the best surviving examples was in modern day Israel. But now in Cambridgeshire, we have a kind of remarkable find, a skeleton from age 25 to 35 at the time of death. The man was buried in the Roman settlement at Fenstanton between Roman Cambridge and Gloucestershire. And again, we found the heel bones that seem to have a nail through the heel bones. And the way they would do this is actually, rather than putting a nail through each heel bone, would be to wrap the feet over one another and then put a nail through both heel bones at the same time. And actually this was, again, this is not a very Christmassy topic, is it? I apologise for this. But the more you look at it, the more you realise that the Roman soldiers charged with putting people onto crosses for crucifixion had to be extraordinarily skilled. Because when you look at the human anatomy, if you were to put a nail through any old part of the heel or lower leg, it wouldn't necessarily at all hold the person in position as they were needed to be, because the skin would just tear, the flesh would tear, and the muscles would tear. You actually have to find and locate a very specific point so that the nail goes through and between and within particular pieces of bone, so that then the nail will actually hold the body weight of the individual for the purposes of crucifixion. So although we talk about this as an extremely gruesome process, as obviously it was, actually there is a huge amount of skill on demonstration as well from the Roman soldiers who had to find that exact point in order for the nail to hold. And one of these has been found in Cambridge. So that's absolutely really, really fascinating to see. And then over in China, we have found, they think, the tomb of Emperor Wen of the Han Dynasty. Now, this is very, very exciting. Obviously, everyone knows the terracotta warriors of the Qin Dynasty, but now we're kind of finding more tombs belonging to the next dynasty, the Han Dynasty emperors, which hopefully will be able to be, as they're excavated and as they're uncovered, allow us to get a sense of how the changing nature of imperial burial in ancient China. So this is all great news. Yes, as Tracy says, skilled and practiced then. Yes, very much so indeed. Right, what's on? The Classical Association Creative Writing Competition is open, so you need to write on the theme of myths, heroes or Troy, and the winning narrative will be narrated by Stephen Fry, who is this year's Classical Association Honorary President, and you can actually have that recorded for yourself, and anyone can get involved. So please do get in your entries to the Classical Association competition. The Ancient Feasts Festival that was being run by the Warwick Classics Network. Sadly, some of the live events had to be cancelled because of COVID, but there's lots of online videos for you to enjoy, and we will be rescheduling the events for the spring when we can. And then if you fancy a bit of ancient Greek ritual and brain science, I was taking part in the Global Science Show this week on Twitter, and we've put up the videos as well there talking about how we use brain science to understand ancient Greek ritual. And then books, we've got new interactive ebook, Latin Now, Volume 1, the Manual of Roman Everyday Writing, which looks looks absolutely brilliant, to learn about how Romans used script to write out just everyday normal stuff, not great works of literature or whatever it was, but just actually communicating everyday information. That's absolutely brilliant. And there's going to be a volume 2 coming out, which is about Roman writing equipment. And then another favourite of mine from the Warwick stable, our latest Material Musings blog is all about treasured toys or substitutes of the dead, dolls found in Roman tombs, by my colleague Zara Newby. So do have a little look at that as well. Now, we've got a little bit of time to answer 1 or 2 more questions before we sign off for Christmas. So we will have a look at Alexis Brown. You were asking, here's one for you all to answer. As it's the time of year for the often dreaded office Secret Santa, I hope you guys are doing your Secret Santas out there. I would love to know who from ancient history or mythology you would hope to get as the person you've got to give a Secret Santa prize to, and what would you give them? Alexis, he wants to buy for Odysseus, and he's going to get Odysseus. This is a very nice Secret Santa prize you're giving Alexis. You're going to buy Odysseus a sat-nav in order for him to be able to get home a bit quicker and a bit easier. Achilles needs a pair of Kevlar Doc Martens, and obviously there's a 5 drachma price limit, because of course we all need a price limit for our secret Santas. So this is an absolutely brilliant question, Alexis. Thank you so much for this. Hello, Chase. Hello, Patricia. Thank you so much indeed. This is a great question. Can you offer up your suggestions of who from ancient history or mythology you would like to buy a Secret Santa for, and what would you give them? So is it Odysseus with a need for a sat-nav? Is it Creon from Sophocles' Antigone with a little notebook about how to perhaps diffuse conflict rather than antagonize it? Is it a post maybe for Medea, and a present for Medea to get her out of trouble, a secret sleigh to take her out of the way and her children out of harm's way before the dreadful things happen to her? What would be your Secret Santa gift for an ancient individual, and what would you want to give them? Let us know your thoughts now. Send them in also through email or on the Facebook page, and we'll collate a good list of them to be able to put up on the Facebook page over Christmas. That would be absolutely fantastic. Alexis, thank you very much indeed for your question. There's one more to come back to, though, as well, that I wanted to touch on. And that is actually, it's Alexis, Emma. We'll save, Alexis, your other question for next time. James is saying, apart from Saturnalia and Christmas, did any classical mystery religions venerate the midwinter solstice? Ooh, interesting question, James. So we've got, of course, I was going to wish you all happy Saturnalia, of course, the festival of misrule, which the early Christians decided to sort of align Christians' celebration of Christmas with, to be able to make it easier for Romans to move over from pagan worship towards Christianity by replacing Saturnalia with another festival around the same time of year. The midwinter solstice. Yes, we talked about the midwinter solstice, didn't we, a little while ago, or rather the midsummer solstice. But we can come back to talk about midwinter solstice at perhaps another Q&A, and we can do a bit of a look-see around the different religions of the ancient world. I'll need to do some digging on that, James, to come back to your question. Paul Karen, a stab vest for Julius Caesar. Brilliant. A mongoose for Cleopatra. A mongoose for Cleopatra? Happy Christmas to everyone, says Rebecca. Happy Christmas to you too, indeed. But here's a final question from Emma Freeman, who's asking about the BSA courses, the British School at Athens courses, particularly for undergraduate students of classics who can then visit all of the ancient sites. They all are offered to people who are currently studying. Are there any courses that allow interested adults who are not students to take part? Yes, indeed. So this is particularly where the museums come in. So have a look on the line for the British Museum, the Ashmolean Museum, Fitzwilliam Museum. Many of these museums offer courses both here in the UK, and some, particularly if you're like a friend of the British Museum, etc., etc., where you can then go on a trip abroad as part of the tours. Think about some of the tour companies that actually specialize in taking you around the kind of ancient world and the great ancient sites as well. There are some absolutely great tour companies that specialize in doing this sort of thing. And obviously, kind of as well, the British School of Athens does run a whole series of public lectures for anyone, both online and in person, if you're happen to be in kind of Athens at the time, so you can get involved in them as well. Gift vouchers for relationship counselling for Zeus. Absolutely, I think definitely he needs that. I like that very much indeed. There's always something for everyone to get involved with and learn about the ancient world. So thank you so much indeed for all of your absolutely fantastic questions. Again, we haven't got to all of them that you've been very kindly sending in, but do keep sending them in. And we look forward to meeting again in 2022. So the next time we'll be doing a Q&A is the 6th of January. Q&A 5 p.m. Tracy's on 5 drachma limit. Yeah, that's not a lot of relationship counselling, is it, for poor old Zeus? I suspect he'd need a little bit more. But I will see you all again on the 6th of January 2022 at 5 p.m. For our next Q&A. In the meantime, do get your orders in for the Michael Scott Christmas calendar. Do have a wonderfully safe, happy and festive break. And kind of I look forward to seeing you all in 2022. And let's hoping that it's a good one. I'm certainly extremely happy to report that I'm looking forward to 2022 with a huge amount of joy. As I have actually recently got engaged and will be getting married in 2022. So I am extremely excited about the year ahead. And it's going to be hopefully a very, very good one indeed. So kind of I hope and I wish for all of you out there that 2022 is actually as joyful and as happy as kind of you all deserve, and that it's a lot safer and a lot easier for all of us than the last couple of years have been. But in the meantime, have a wonderful Christmas and take care of yourselves and one another. Take care. Bye-bye.